Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Sorry for a bit of the delay, but welcome to our mission overview briefing for NASA's Space Crew 2 mission to the International Space Station. It's currently set to launch no earlier than April 20th. It's going to be the second full rotation mission to the station aboard a SpaceX Crew Dragon. This time, we'll have astronauts from NASA, ESA, and JAXA, so we have representatives from all the partner agencies and SpaceX with us here today. Running down the list of participants, we have Kathy Leaders, the NASA Associate Administrator for Human Exploration and Operations. We have Steve Stitch, the Program Manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Joel Montalbano, the NASA Program Manager for the International Space Station. Benji Reed, Senior Director of Human Spaceflight Programs at SpaceX. Hiroshi Sasaki, JAXA Vice President and Director General for Human Spaceflight Technology Directorate. And David Parker, the Director of Human and Robotic Exploration at ESA. As always, we'll start with opening remarks and then take questions from media over the phone and on social media. If you're dialed into our media line and want to ask a question, make sure to press *1 to get into the queue. And once you're in, if your question is answered, you can press *2 to jump back out. And since we're all virtual, please remember, state your name, affiliation, and who your question is for. And then in the interest of time, we'll limit one question each, and then we'll come back around for follow-ups. And if you're watching online and want to ask a question, jump on Twitter and use the hashtag AskNASA. So we'll jump right in, starting off with Kathy Leaders.
Exciting day. You know, when we start having press conferences, we're getting ready to fly. And we're getting ready to fly again. This time we're going to fly Shane, Megan, Aki, and Thomas. And when you think about it, a year ago, when we were getting ready to fly Demo 2, we were just dreaming of the fact that we would be getting ready for our third crew mission in a year. First year flying, third crew mission in that year. First our Demo 2 mission, Crew 1, and now Crew 2. I'm very, very proud of our NASA and SpaceX team that have made this happen. I'm also very proud of the International Space Station program team that is just very, very busy these days. I mean, the space station has become the spaceport we wanted it to be, with vehicles flying to it and returning science and payloads and doing amazing things on orbit. And in addition, I'm extremely proud of the international partnership. You know, this flight exemplifies the partnership and how we are continuing to advance human spaceflight with what we do every day, and will lead us to not only doing great things on the space station, but doing even more in our space exploration programs going forward. So thank you, Dan, and thank you all for being here today and helping us celebrate what is one more milestone for us to fly our crews back to the International Space Station again.
All right, thank you, Kathy. And now we will go to Steve Stitch, the manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Steve?
Thanks, Dan. It's great to be here today. It's an exciting time in Commercial Crew. Last week I was talking to Benji Reed, my counterpart at SpaceX, and we were reminiscent about a year ago where we had the one crew flight in front of us with Bob and Doug. And now as we sit here today, we're talking about Crew 2, our first crewed flight of this year. We plan in our program, we plan 3 crewed flights. We'll have the Crew 2 mission, which we'll detail today. We'll have Crew 3 later in the year, in the fall time frame, and we'll also have our first Boeing crewed flight right now, nowhere in September, the crewed flight test this year. So we have 3 crewed missions this year, and lots of planning also into the flights for next year. If I just step back, we also have an orbital flight test for Boeing this year in the Commercial Crew Program. But if I look at the vehicles we have today, you know, Crew 1's on orbit, and it's doing great. We just surpassed last week 100 days on orbit, and that vehicle is doing wonderfully. We check it out every week, and it's doing fine. You know, Crew 2 right now, the launch date is no earlier than April the 20th. We'll probably adjust that a little bit to more optimize some of the orbital mechanics and the launch opportunities as we go forward. We really want to get that flight in between the Soyuz operations, where we have a couple Soyuz vehicles that I know Joel will touch on, and then the Beta cut out in May, and then we have some dark landing opportunities. So we really want to get that flight flown in that time frame. And then of course we'll return the Crew 1 vehicle and its crew, who's doing a great job on orbit, probably late April, early May. We really want to get that flight flown and back down before we have dark landing opportunities around May 9th. This is an exciting flight for us. It's the first time we have not only another JAXA crew member in Aki, but we also have a European Space Agency crew member in Thomas. We're excited about that. We're excited about this Crew Dragon, which has some enhanced capabilities over the Crew 1 vehicle, and I know Benji will talk about that. We have enhanced abort capability. We have some enhanced prop capability, making it an even safer vehicle, and some crew improvements inside the cockpit as well. We're about to embark upon our first port relocation on orbit very soon, and we're looking at the late March, early April timeframe. We'll move the Crew 1 vehicle from where it is on the forward port on Space Station. We'll move it up to the Zenith port to make room for the Crew 2 launch. Overall, just an exciting time. I can't thank our team enough. You know, over the last year or so, we have worked on reuse of the vehicle. This is our first flight where we'll have a reused Dragon. This is the vehicle that Bob and Doug flew back on Demo 2, and we'll have our first reused booster. And we've worked through that certification effort with people both on the NASA's team and the SpaceX team, and had our review last Friday, and we're in really good shape on reuse. And then one final thing, you know, it's a real busy time frame in April on the ISS, and we're right now in the process of looking at the orbit flight test and what to do with that flight. You know, we've had some unfortunate weather here in the Houston area where we lost about a week of time in some critical software testing. The vehicle's coming together nicely. We recovered from a power-up anomaly well, and we're about 2 weeks down from where we'd like to be, and so we're in the process of figuring out the next step on OFT2. I'm certainly proud of our commercial crew team. It's already been a busy year, and we look forward to more busyness as we get on to Crew 2. I'll turn it back over to you, Dan.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Now we'll go to Joel Montalbano, NASA's Program Manager for the International Space Station. Joel?
Thank you, Dan. Welcome again to today's press brief. As you heard from both Steve and Kathy, we have another busy spring on board the International Space Station. And if you've been watching us for a while, that's standard, but the team has just been awesome trying to accommodate the different vehicles, the different crewed and uncrewed vehicles as they come and go. And as Steve said, you know, one of our jobs is to continually look at flight plan to make sure what we're doing is maximizing the use of the International Space Station. So we will adjust when these vehicles are ready, and we'll fly accordingly. For the Crew 2 mission, we've done a number of reviews already completed, and while we do have a handful of reviews still to go, we are working towards the April date, the April 20th, or as Steve mentioned earlier, based on trajectory, we may move it a couple days to the right, but we're working in that direction, and the teams are ready to go. In addition to the 2 NASA astronauts, we're excited to see a European Space Agency astronaut fly on this vehicle. We're excited to see another Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut fly. This mission, as stated earlier, will stay approximately 6 months, so a full increment. In addition to delivering the crews, this vehicle will deliver about 200 plus kilograms of pressurized cargo to the International Space Station to enhance our science and utilization program, to help us in technology development, and to help us in low Earth orbit commercialization activities on board the International Space Station. Last year, we celebrated 20 years of continuous human presence on board the International Space Station. And over those 20 years, you've seen changes in how we operate the International Space Station. While our recent agreements with the American private industry has allowed us to bring more people to space, more people to the International Space Station, and has allowed us to increase the low Earth orbit commercialization activities that has made a priority at the agency. So it's an exciting time. We're very excited to be working with our SpaceX and Boeing providers, as well as our other cargo providers with Northrop Grumman, as well as Sierra Nevada Corporation. So in closing, I want a huge thanks to the Commercial Crew Program, a huge thanks to SpaceX. From the international partnership, we're ready for these vehicles. We're excited with the relationship we have. We look forward to an awesome Crew 2 mission and an outstanding expedition. So back over to you, Dan. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Joel. Next up, we're going to go to Benji Reed, Senior Director for Human Spaceflight Programs at SpaceX. Benji?
Hi there. Happy Monday. In just about 7 weeks, we're going to be launching the Crew 2 mission, as was well talked about here by Kathy, Steve, and Joel. On behalf of SpaceX, all of our employees, our vendors, our families, and everybody, thank you. Thank you to NASA, to ESA, and to JAXA, and especially to the crew and to the families of the crew for trusting us with this honor. As we've said before, and every time, it's a sacred honor to make sure that we're going to carry this crew safely to the space station, keep them up there well, keep Dragon there ready for them whenever they need it, and bring them home safely. So thank you very much. It's also been fun, and a lot of fun to be preparing for this mission. It is amazing to think about. As Steve mentioned, we were just talking the other day about just a year ago, we were in the same spot, looking at launching our first astronauts, Bob and Doug. The first time returning human spaceflight capability to the United States in almost 10 years. And it's crazy to think here we are getting ready for our third flight. And here at SpaceX we have, at least a couple of dozen astronauts in training at any given point in time. And that's a pretty cool thing. And so part of that fun, though, is the crew themselves and getting to know them. So I think we have a photo we can bring up. That's a great picture of Thomas and Megan and Aki and Shane. And we've got that up, and it's good to see that crew there, and they're happy and excited and to be getting ready to go. They've been going through all the training that they needed to do, and our crews as well, our teams, our ground teams as well, being ready to serve them and help them along the way. The next thing coming up, we've got a port relocation. So as we get ready for all the data, this traffic that's coming up at the spaceport, as Kathy called it, is we need to make sure that we've got the right ports ready for which vehicles are going to arrive. As needed, we'll be ready to do a port relocation as early as the end of this month for NASA. We'll work with, of course, the station program to understand exactly when and where they need that to happen. In that case, the Crew 1 crew would enter Dragon, be in their suits, get ready to go, and actually relocate Dragon from the Node 2 forward port to the Node 2 Zenith port. And then that frees up the Node 2 forward port to be ready for another incoming vehicle. After that, we have the launch of Crew 2, and as talked about, everybody is on track and ready for a April 20th launch readiness date. And as Joel mentioned, we'll work closely with the ISS program, the commercial crew program, and also particularly looking at the physics of it and the orbital mechanics of when are we going to be able to actually go to the space station, and that kind of helps define our opportunities. So we'll be working with that, and it'll be around that time there in the second half of April. Finally, after the Crew 2 gets up there, and they start to do a process of a handover with the Crew 1 crew, and that lasts for a few days, and then the Crew 1 crew will return home, and we'll bring them safely home. And all of these operations are critical and very important. All the focus here at SpaceX and with our partners at NASA and at JAXA and ESA is to ensure the crew safety and ensure the reliability of the vehicles and the operations. So we'll be focused very much on that. Speaking of the vehicles that we need to fly reliably and safely, let's take a look. I think we've a picture coming up here of Dragon. This is the Dragon that's going to fly for Crew 2. This is the same Dragon that flew the Demo 2 mission that carried Bob and Doug. The refurbishment of this vehicle has been going very well. It's will be our first flight-proven Dragon for crew missions. Obviously, we've done quite a number of flight-proven Dragons on the CRS-1 program for all of those cargo vehicles. Many of those were flight-proven, and now we're getting ready to do our first one here with this Crew 2 mission. So it's a beautiful vehicle. It worked well for Bob and Doug, and it'll carry this new crew safely to the station and home. We also have another picture here of Falcon 9, and again, this Falcon 9 also has a history with the crew program. This is the same Falcon 9 booster that flew the Crew 1 crew up. And so that vehicle has started its refurbishment process, and that's progressing very well. And we'll be ready in time for our April 20th readiness to, again, safely carry the crew up to orbit. Other items that are coming up soon, near the end of this month, we'll also be doing our Crew Equipment Interface Test, or the CEIT test. That's a test where basically the crew goes down and checks out the vehicle, kind of for the last time. They get to walk down the vehicle, see exactly what's going on in there, make sure that everything's set the way they expect it to be. Obviously, they've been in the vehicle quite a bit, both from an inspection viewpoint and a training viewpoint while it was here in Hawthorne. But now they'll go down at the Cape and they'll do that final inspection down there. And that's an important test. We'll get through that. We've been completing a number of other tests. We've completed a number of rounds of our software preparation and testing. Our software is all locked down. And software tests are joint tests that we do with the station program to ensure that the Dragon software and computers will talk well with the station computers. That's all gone very well as we run through those. We've also run through all of our certification efforts. Those are closing out. We completed a major review with station for readiness to be able to dock to station as part of that certification process, and we're continuing through the remaining certification items that are normal on this timeline as we move towards launch. So we are excited and ready to get going. Obviously, we are continuing to check all the boxes, triple check under all the ruts and everywhere to make sure that we're ready to fly this crew. And as we always say, we won't fly until we're ready. As important as it is to keep station staffed, keep the astronauts coming up and going up and coming home, keep the science running and the fundamental purpose of station, most important is the crew's safety and ensure that we are ready to fly. As part of that process, we'll go through our flight readiness review. We do internal flight readiness reviews here at SpaceX with NASA involved, and we also do joint readiness reviews with the agency that are very important. And then, of course, just before launch, we do our launch readiness review. As we move through those gates, we'll confirm that we're ready to go. Again, it's truly an honor to be here to represent all of the many thousands of people who work hard on all of these missions, the sacrifices that they make, and the fun that they have to get ready to go fly this crew. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Benji. Now we're going to go out to Hiroshi Sasaki, the JAXA Vice President and Director General, Human Spaceflight Technology Directorate for JAXA.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm Hiro Sasaki, Vice President with JAXA, responsible for human spaceflight and space exploration. First of all, on behalf of JAXA, I'd like to sincerely thank the NASA leadership and all the members who worked so hard for the crew to launch preparations and continuing the ISS operations under the tough COVID-19 situation. I'm very pleased astronaut Aki Hoshide will board the Crew 2 and participate in the long-term mission in the ISS, following the ongoing mission pursued by astronaut Noguchi. During Hoshide's stay, a variety of experiments will be performed, including the advanced ECRUS demonstration for future space exploration, CubeSat deployment to expand the utilization of space by various sectors. Aki Hoshide is now ready to launch. I hope Japanese astronauts continue to play an important role in promoting human space program and explorations. Astronauts Wakata and Furukawa are also assigned for upcoming flight respectively, and furthermore, JAXA plans to recruit new astronauts around fall. I'm sure that the Crew 2 mission is a symbol of enhanced international partnership. I think this is the first launch of NASA, ESA, and JAXA astronauts who will fly to the ISS together. In addition, commercial partners, including SpaceX, are providing much more capability to the ISS. This partnership will achieve more fruitful results from the ISS and the exploration. Thank you. Back to you, Dan.
All right, thank you, Hiroshi. And now we are going to go to David Parker, the Director of Human and Robotic Exploration for ESA. David?
Thank you very much, Dan, and good day to one and all. First of all, thank you for the chance to participate in this briefing. I would like to say that it's a particularly important day for ESA. The 1st of March is not only St. David's Day, but also the first day in the office for our new Director General, Josef Aschbacher. Therefore, I'd like to pass on a few words on his behalf. We're delighted that Thomas Pesquet is the first European to fly to the ISS on a US commercial crew vehicle, and we appreciate the tremendous work that has been done to prepare this flight. Matthias Maurer will fly to the station on a US vehicle later this year, and so will our future European astronauts will follow him in the months and years to come. So Mission Alpha is Thomas' second to the International Space Station. It comes at a time of unparalleled growth in Europe's space exploration program. And I think we're really looking forward to an exciting decade of discovery and innovation from Columbus, Europe's science lab aboard the ISS. Indeed, I think I would say that we're entering the golden age of ISS utilization because of the fact, thanks to the new US vehicles, of having 7 crew aboard the station. It's already providing a dramatic increase in the number of science hours available to us. So Thomas' mission will involve human research, biology, fluid physics, material science, technology development, earth science, and even education projects. With all this utilization going on, it's why we are in the middle of a major kind of midlife update to the Columbus laboratory. So the updates include the new Columbus Ka-band data terminal, giving high-speed data links via ESA's data relay satellite network, the Bartolomeo commercial platform that will become operational mounted on Columbus, and upgrades to experiment racks and the IT infrastructure of Columbus. This prospect of the next decade of work using in low Earth orbit is also why 2 weeks ago we launched a call to select the new European astronauts and perhaps in a global first, launched the Para-Astronaut Feasibility Project to prepare a flight opportunity for a physically disabled astronaut to carry out a full mission. And we have many other aspects of our future exploration program to look forward to. But maybe my final thought, beyond all the technology and all the science, I do recall that we do global exploration as a partnership to inspire all humanity, and especially the next generation. And I think this is even more important in these difficult times of COVID. So I can tell you that the passion and the commitment of everyone at ESA, alongside all the international partners, is propelling us into this new decade of space exploration. And I know Thomas Pesquet is eager and ready and willing to make his contribution. So best wishes from the new Director General, from myself, and from all the team at ESA, and let's keep exploring together. Thank you. Back to you, Dan.
All right, thank you very much, David. So now we're going to jump into the Q&A. As a reminder, if you are dialed into our media line, press *1 to get into the queue. And if your question is answered, press *2 to jump back out. And if you're on social media, jump on Twitter and use the hashtag #AskNASA. All right, so our first caller that we will go with today is Joey Roulette from The Verge. Joey?
Hey, thanks for doing this. Question for Benji. I just wanted you to speak a little bit more into what you guys have learned from refurbishing the crew Dragon vehicle as opposed to the cargo Dragon vehicles. And what kind of challenges and costs does SpaceX avoid by doing that refurb in Florida instead of shipping it out of state? And then just one other question for Joel. When do you expect a deal to be reached for with the U.S. company for that Soyuz seat planned for MS-18? Thanks.
Before I do, I just want to do a quick go back. It was very inspiring to hear both the JAXA and the ESA representatives speak today, just now, and I want to say how exciting and how cool it is for us to have this international crew. I don't think I said enough about that, and it's worth reiterating how important it is that we we have this international partnership and our opportunity to be able to fly Thomas and Aki. And I think those are great words just now about passion and opening a new space age. It's great to do it, and it's great to do it for all of humanity. And these programs like looking to be able to fly a physically disabled astronaut, these are really, really great. And so thank you guys, and thank you both and all of your teams and everyone there for flying with SpaceX too. Now on to the question about refurbishment and flight-proven Dragons. So from the beginning, it's important here at SpaceX. We wanted to make sure we really understood how do you refly. We've said it before, and it's always worth repeating. You don't jump in an airline or in an airplane, fly from one coast to the other coast, push it off into the ocean, and you're done with that one flight. That's a very expensive process, and if you do that with spaceflight, it continues to be almost prohibitively expensive. So as we started at SpaceX from the beginning, we said how do we refly? So this kind of key, this golden key to getting into this new space age is all about being able to refly and reuse vehicles. So we designed Dragon from the beginning with some of that in mind. The same with Falcon. We continue to evolve and learn over the years, and how do we return vehicles, and how do we return them in a way that we can safely and quickly refurbish them and confidently and reliably fly them again. And so we did a lot of that on the Dragon program, on the Cargo Dragon program, and we took all of those lessons and fed them into the design of Dragon 2. So Dragon 2 now, of course, is the line of Dragons that's flying crew and is flying cargo now. And that new design of Dragon has all those lessons from many years and many flights of the original Cargo Dragons, bringing that to bear as we go through that. And one of the number one things that you have to worry about is water intrusion. So salt water is very corrosive. It's not a great thing when you want to keep something, keep your physical materials sound and especially easy to refurbish and to reuse. So we do everything we can to prevent water intrusion. Teams did a lot of great work on that, even on the original Cargo Dragon, to prevent that. And then the design, again, kind of from the ground up, of the Dragon 2 vehicle has prevented that. As we've continued to go through the first refurbishment process for a crew vehicle, we've been looking at things closely. Obviously, number one always is crew safety. And so there are elements that we think about, are we going to replace these? Are we ready to fully certified internally? We're ready to qualify that this particular subsystem or component is ready to be reused. And then we go through a process with NASA to make sure that they agree, that we're all agreeing that these components and these subsystems are ready to reuse. I can happily say the vast majority of the vehicle is flight proven. In this case, we are changing some valves, for example. We're changing some of the thermal protection system. On crew vehicles, we tend to fly. We always fly the new parachutes, and so some of those are new, but otherwise, it's really the same vehicle that's very carefully inspected, carefully prepared, refurbished as needed, and ready to fly. It's been a great process to learn there. The other thing that you're learning as you go through this is okay, well, how much more do I need to do for the next time? And so we're always learning, and always applying that back into our systems. I think you asked a question about, what are the benefits of doing this down at the Cape? Well, it's the same idea if we go back to, aircraft-like operations, right? We want this to be, ultimately going to space needs to be like going to the airport and getting on an airplane. So you don't take your airplane that you want to fly, now you're not going to push it off in the ocean, but you're going to refit, but now you got to send it all the way back to the factory and get it ready for its next flight. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? You don't want to do that. It's still very expensive. So what you do, of course, in an airplane is it's on the ground, and we refuel it, check it out, do the inspections, whatever they need to do. They can even do some repairs right there at the airport, and then you refly. The same idea ultimately for spacecraft. You want to be able to launch, return, and prepare for reflight, basically in the same area that all in the same area, all those operations happening in the same area. And so we've been driving for a number of years towards refurbishment at the Cape. We've already been doing it. This refurbishment is part of that flow. In fact, when new Dragons come off the line here in Hawthorne, they go down to the Cape. They actually go through some final work in preparation for flight at the Cape anyway, so we've always had that capability. Have an awesome team down there that works very hard, and they've got multiple Dragons in flow, just like the team here, that are building all the components and building the new Dragons. And so bringing all of that experience to bear makes it a great process to do down at the Cape. So we're glad to have that going on. And I think the other question was for Joel.
Thanks, Joey. Good question. Our long-term goal is to continue flying NASA astronauts on Soyuz and to have cosmonauts flying on our U.S. crewed vehicles, and we're working towards that goal. For this specific procurement, we're in a blackout period for now, but my plan or my goal is by the end of next week to be able to give you a status on where we are with that procurement.
All right. Thank you, Joel. Just a reminder for those on our phone line, please try to keep it to one question for now so we can get through as many as we can. We'll come back for follow-ups. Next, we will go to Stephen Clark with Spaceflight Now.
Hi, Stephen Clark for Spaceflight Now. My question is for Benji, and maybe Steve can chime in. Steve hinted at some abort system enhancements, some prop enhancements, and some changes in the cockpit for this mission, those upgrades. What do those upgrades entail? Is this the first time those are flying, or is this sort of just an update of the spacecraft to get it, to get it to the status that the Crew Dragon on Crew 1 flew in? Just can you talk about those? And also, briefly, if I could, Steve, are launch dates, do they look more favorable before April 20th or after April 20th? Just want to get a feel of which way the launch may be moving. Thanks.
Great. I'll tell you a couple of my favorite ones, and then Stitch, if you have some that you want to talk about, we can talk about those too. In terms of what we do with Dragon to make sure that it's safer and even safer as we continue to learn and go through the process. One of the ones that I'll talk about is basically updating certain elements of the structure to ensure that when we come and when we splash down in the ocean, this is basically this phenomenon that can occur. It's a secondary splash, basically secondary impact, where you've hit the water and the water comes back up and it can basically hit the hull, right, hit the structure. And it's interesting, the physics and the dynamics of it, because actually there are just the right combination of wave heights and winds and the velocity of the vehicle as it comes in, that secondary splash can hit pretty hard. And so we've done a lot to analyze for that and test for that. And what ultimately that does, of course, is number one, you make the vehicle as strong as you can to withstand that, but you also look at the weather, right? And so you create a lot of limits around the weather, around wind speed, wave height, all these different things that are happening. And as you have those limits around weather, number one, it keeps the crew safe and builds margin for your safety, but it also tends to shrink your availability. And in this case, this would be for landing availability. So one of the things that we've done is we've actually beefed up parts of the structure so that we can expand that window of opportunity to be able to bring the crew home while maintaining all of that safety and all of that margin for the crew. I think this is really important. I think one of the most important updates that we've done on this particular Dragon. And going forward, that'll always be part of the design. Steve, you probably have a couple others that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, thanks, Benji. I'll talk about a few. One of the upgrades on this vehicle is, I would say, improved pad abort performance. So, as you may know, the Dragon is designed to have continuous abort capability from the launch all the way till when it gets in orbit. SpaceX went off and looked at a way to optimize their propellant system and provide a little more propellant for an abort off the pad. And that did a couple things. One, it improved crew safety for should we get into that kind of unfortunate situation for a pad abort where the crew would need to leave the pad for an emergency. And secondly, it really improved launch availability. We can handle a little bit stronger onshore winds and improve launch availability. So that's one of the ones that is my favorite for the flight. Another one, in terms of crew safety, we learned a lot about titanium and nitrogen tetroxide, the oxidizer, and that compatibility. We've enhanced the Super Draco thrusters and removed some titanium from that system, gone to stainless steel kind of material in those and improved safety there. So those are a couple of the ones that we've done on this flight. I really look at this flight as kind of really an abort enhancement flight. In terms of the question about launch dates and launch opportunities, right now it looks like there's a few more opportunities after April 20th, and so we talked about maybe adjusting the launch a few days to the right for a launch around a couple days after the 20th. We should have about 6 launch dates before the Soyuz cutout, and would give us an opportunity to have about 8 landing opportunities for the Crew 1 vehicle. So Joel and this Commercial Crew Program and SpaceX have been working that very closely to optimize that, ensure we can land safely and then launch safely ahead of this beta cutout that we have coming in May.
All right, thank you, Steve. Next up, we have Bill Harwood with CBS News. Bill.
Yeah, thank you very much. This one's for, I'm not sure who it's for, maybe Kathy. With the increasing flight rate of SpaceX, they're launching lots and lots of rockets, which you can either argue that makes them safer and safer, or it raises the odds that something will happen at some point that could cause a problem getting them off the ground. My question is, how important is it, speaking generically about Soyuz here, not specifics, but how important is it to get the Boeing ship flying and to get seats on Soyuz, really to protect station and protect seats in the case of an issue that might ground SpaceX or vice versa, ground Boeing, to have that second provider available on the U.S. side, and then obviously to have the ability to keep someone on board if a Soyuz had to leave or an American ship. Can you just generically talk about how important it is to get these other vehicles with Americans on board up and flying? Thanks.
Oh, Bill, thank you for that question, because I think it's extremely critical. We've talked about it, and you talked about just a couple of the scenarios that could cause a problem where we don't have as robust a logistics capability for us to keep the station going as we'd like, right? And after following us for a while, we're planners, and we feel like us always flying a USOS crew member up on every single vehicle going up, and also us having multiple providers on the U.S. side is what, protects us from all kinds of contingencies. We really look forward to bringing our second provider line. It not only provides flexibility, it gives SpaceX a chance to be able to have other opportunities for them. We've been very grateful that SpaceX has been here and as a provider for us and stepped up for us to be able to be flying to the International Space Station while we're bringing the Boeing capability online. But SpaceX has other things they want to do with these vehicles too, right? And we would like them, it goes back to what Joel mentioned, we would like to have them have other commercial opportunities out there. But they've been critical, they've stepped up and supported us and made sure that we've had a consistent U.S. commercial provider during this period where we're bringing our second U.S. commercial provider back online. But you also know, Bill, that if there can be a number of issues that don't have anything to do with the spacecraft that can cause all of the crew members on a vehicle to be able to come down, including a medical emergency on orbit or some issue with one part of the segment. And so we love the fact that we're working towards a capability and moving to have in place the international agreements where we would be able to fly our crew members up on a Soyuz, have the Roscosmos fly their crew members up on one of our 2 commercial crew providers and move forward into this new age. It gives us the most robust logistics strategy.
All right, thank you, Kathy. Next up, we have Jeff Faust with Space News. Jeff?
Hello. For Steve Stitch, is NASA still looking at any implications from the failed Falcon 9 booster landing a couple of weeks ago and its implications for the Crew 2 launch? And for Benji Reed, are there any details you can share about what SpaceX found out about why that booster failed to land? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll start off and then we'll hand it over to Benji. I would say just like any other anomaly on the Falcon 9, SpaceX has been a tremendous partner inviting NASA to participate in that investigation, and so we have members on that team. We will follow along with SpaceX's investigation, and we'll look at that, and that'll be something we'll bring through our program control board and make sure that we have separation from that and understand that anomaly before we go fly. We do that across the Falcon 9 fleet. Our team really follows all the Falcon 9 flights, and we learn from each one. One of the things I really like about what's happening is SpaceX's Starlink flights are pretty far out there in terms of the number of times they've flown a booster. You know, we're about to embark upon our first reuse here for a crewed vehicle. And so what we're doing is we're learning from each of those flights, and we're feeding that back into our certification for reuse. So I think it's a great partnership to have those vehicles a little further out there in terms of number of flights. And so as we understand our crew capability and how many flights we can get out of a booster, it just really augments our certification process. And I'll turn it over to Benji.
Great, thank you, Steve. And it's a great question. It's kind of just playing right off from there. It's true, right? The more you fly, the more you learn. So it's just like the more you test, the more you learn. I would never be one to say we should fly less or test less. I'd rather learn everything we can. And that is a great opportunity from these Starlink flights. We get to fly our higher count flight-proven vehicles to take the Starlink satellites to orbit. And in fact, this is a good example. So the anomaly that we saw on this one particularly, it was a higher count vehicle. And some of the components were actually the highest count. They were life leaders. In this case particularly, there was an engine. To give you just a little bit more detail, basically there are covers, we call them boots, over certain parts of the engine. In this case, one of these boots, this was the highest count number of flights that this particular boot design had seen. And it's important. We do this. We know that this is happening. We're studying this. We want to make sure we understand the life process of these flight-proven components and vehicles. This particular boot had a little bit of a hole. Basically, developed a hole. There's hot gases, of course. I mean, that's what makes the rocket go up. Very hot gases coming out of the engine. But you want those hot gases to be where they're supposed to be, and not go where they're not supposed to be. So that boot, a little bit of a hole developed. A little bit of hot gas got to where it's not supposed to be, and it caused that engine to shut down. And that's the great thing about Falcon 9, is we have engine out capability. Plus the vehicle has all of these great systems to autonomously control itself, shut down, abort what it needs to. And in this case, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It cut out that engine, turned that engine off. The vehicle was safe. The vehicle got to orbit, put the satellites exactly where they want to be. Primary mission was accomplished. When that booster came to return home, because of the problem with that particular engine, we didn't have enough thrust in order to get back to where we needed to be, and didn't land where we wanted to be in that case. But bottom line is that's a great lesson that we learned from from doing these multi-life, very long life leader type components and vehicles. In terms of going from there, we apply here's where we need to do more inspections. Here are the kinds of components we need to replace, and here's where we can actually upgrade the systems, right, the algorithms on the vehicle to even further detect and control what the vehicle needs to do. And that's what we're doing as we move forward.
All right, thank you, Benji. We're going to squeeze in a couple of #AskNASA questions. This first one is for Joel. Been getting a lot of questions about this, so I'm going to combine two from the community at r/SpaceX and from Jacqueline Irving on Twitter. Is the 7th crew member still going to be sleeping in Dragon? And what is the plan to enable a 7th crew compartment? And when we do the handover, where are all of the astronauts going to sleep?
Good question. So on the last Northrop Grumman mission, we flew an additional sleep station that'll be planned to be installed in the Columbus module. So long term, we'll have 5 sleeping stations for the different crew members. During the handovers, the 2 crews work together to kind of plan pre-mission where everybody's going to sleep, and then they'll update in real time. Options maybe we can still have someone sleep in the Dragon module. Maybe we'll have someone sleep in the U.S. airlock. Maybe someone in the Japanese module. Again, these are a short duration mission, somewhere in the order of 5 to 7 days. So it's more of a camp out type scenario. But again, the crews will get together, and once they get there, they'll talk to each other and adjust accordingly. Good question.
All right, thank you, Joel. And for Benji, from Scoochie on Twitter, wanted to know, can crew flights carry any cargo in Dragon's trunk, or would it be too dangerous in case of an in-flight abort?
That's a great question. We don't normally plan to fly any cargo in the trunk of Dragon, and it's not particularly because it's dangerous per se, but it does have to do with aborts. We've optimized the trunk for aerodynamic stability in the case of an abort. We've also optimized the CG, the center of gravity, and the mass of that vehicle in case of an abort, in case that Dragon has to get off the Falcon really fast. And so in that case, we actually don't want to have any cargo in the trunk for that specific reason. Great question.
All right, thank you, Benji. And now jumping back over to the phone lines, we're going to go next to Chris Davenport with the Washington Post. Chris?
Hey guys, thanks. A question about refurbishment, so I guess it's for Benji or maybe Steve. I'm just wondering, how long did it take to refurbish the Crew 2 vehicle after Demo 2, and how do you think that timeline will improve going forward, say after Crew 2, 3, et cetera? And then I just wonder if you have a sense of how many times you want to fly Dragon, how many times you want to reuse it, and if you got any insight into that. I think it was you wanted to do it maybe 5 times. Do you think that's achievable based on what you've seen from this vehicle? Thanks.
Great. I'll start on this one. So in terms of the time frame, certainly the Demo 2 to Crew 2 refurbishment is a process that we took a lot longer on because we wanted to very much understand this vehicle. Because it's the first time we a crew vehicle and to station and back, the first time we were refurbishing it to get it ready to go. So it was a multi-month process. As we went through that process, as I mentioned earlier, we're learning about what needs to be fully replaced, where we should be inspecting more deeply, what kinds of things we need to do going forward, and looking how to maximally optimize that process on future vehicles. And I think you get it down to just a matter of a couple of months, and I think that's a really good place to be. But long term, as always, as we look towards the future, aircraft-like operations are our goal. In this case, for Dragon and making sure we're safe to fly through, we'll probably kind of tend to be taking kind of in that couple of month range, but we'll see as we go. I don't know if there's any other questions, but I think that answers that one.
All right. Next up, we're going to go to Chelsea Go with Space.com. Chelsea?
Hi, how's it going? Chelsea with Space.com. You spoke a bit about the crew handoff and kind of the maneuver that they're going to do to switch ports with the Crew 1 vehicle to make room for Crew 2, and then the few days that they're going to spend before Crew 1 departs the space station. Could you speak a bit more about that process, what that handoff will look like, as it's the first time that a full Crew Dragon crew will be handing it off to another full Crew Dragon crew?
Let's see, Steve, Stitch, maybe I can take the handover one, and then you can talk about the port relocation.
Sounds good.
All right, so for the handover, handovers are something that we've done multiple times on board the International Space Station. The first thing the crew members will do is there'll be an emergency review of the emergency processes. What happens if we have an event on board, a fire event, a depressurization event, or a toxic atmosphere event, and how do we act to that? How do we react to that? So that's going to be the number one thing that the crew members are going to be doing. And that'll happen within the first day. And then the next days, and I'm thinking we're probably talking a 5 to 7 day handover between the two crews. They'll be talking about the different processes, what life is on board the International Space Station, how they react to different maintenance activities, any science activities. The crew members will be talking about some of the research work we do and some of the challenges we have in working with the different facilities or the operations of those facilities. And again, it'll take about 5 to 7 days. And so, Steve, let me hand it over to you, and you can talk a little bit about the relocation.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. So the relocation is an important activity before we actually do the handover. Right now, the Dragon spacecraft is on the forward port of the space station. So as the space station flies along, it's on that forward port. We need to get that vehicle moved up to the zenith port in order to let the next vehicle come up. We really want that Crew 2 vehicle on that forward port. So what we'll do is the actual maneuver is pretty straightforward. It's all automated. The crew will get in their suits, and they will get into the Dragon, and we'll do some leak checks in between the two vehicles. When we're confident that we've got the hatches all sealed, we'll depress that vestibule and then open the hooks on that docking port, the international docking adapter on the forward part. The vehicle will back away to a certain range, and then really it just does a translation and flies up around and comes in and docks to that zenith port. That translation is really short. It only takes about 45 to 50 minutes to do that. There's quite a bit of prep that goes into it. You know, a few days ahead of time, the crew will get into their suits and check the suits out and make sure those suits are functioning and working fine. We'll do some checkouts of the Dragon vehicle to make sure all the prop systems are working before we go do that maneuver. And then on the ground, we'll have teams available and ready should something happen to where we can't go up and dock to that zenith port, and we needed to either come back and try again 24 hours later, or also actually land. We'll have a recovery ship. SpaceX will have their recovery ship ready to go for the Atlantic sites off the coast of Florida, and then we'll also have the Detachment 3 ready to go, the DoD forces in the event that something would happen. So it's the first time we've done this in the U.S. I would say the SpaceX and NASA teams are taking this operation very seriously and working through checking out all the procedures, all the flight software, and just making sure we're ready to go do this. It's something that we'll do quite often, but it's the first time we'll have done it with the Dragon vehicle.
All right, thank you, Steve. We have time for about one more, depending on how quick our answer is. But next we'll go to Marcia Dunn with the Associated Press.
Yes, hi. For either Steve or Kathy, I'd like NASA's take on the risk assessment using used vehicles. I'm just wondering if you think there'll be added risk because of wear and tear already on these vehicles, or will there be perhaps less risk than a brand new vehicle because it's flight proven? Could you just give me your latest take? Thanks.
Yeah, I'm happy to start out, Marcia. The vehicle, as Benji said, the launch vehicle and the Dragon were designed with reuse in mind, much like the space shuttle was designed for a certain number of flights. When we go through this certification process, we really look at every part of the vehicle. We look at the parts that are going to be new. As Benji said, there are new parachutes, new heat shield, new nose cone, and new components. And then we look at what we're doing during the refurbishment process. We've had NASA personnel down in Florida at Dragonland as the refurbishment happens. We have activities that we need to go witness and watch what SpaceX is doing. So overall, I don't really see any high risk in reuse because we've gone through it in a methodical process and we've checked as the components get reinstalled. And then if you step back and look at this flight, we are improving the risk posture of the vehicle by improving aborts, improving the pad abort capability, eliminating titanium in the propulsion system, improving downrange aborts by changing the software. So overall, I think this vehicle, we're continuing to endeavor to buy down risk in the program over time.
All right, thank you, Steve. I think we have time for just one last one. Irene Klotz with Aviation Week. Irene?
Thanks, Dan. For Steve, you mentioned OFT2 was a couple weeks down. Just wanted to check if that's delaying from the announced last week of April 2nd and the current target dates for MS-18 launch, MS-17 landing. And for Benji, just real quick, when did the engine go out on the February 16th launch? Thank you.
Yeah, regarding OFT2, we are going to have to move off of that April the 2nd date, and we're continuing to evaluate options. As I said before, the vehicle is really coming together. We had a little bit of a power-up anomaly with some avionics components. The Boeing and NASA team worked really well to get those components reinstalled and checked out, and that was completed over the weekend. But we did lose time with the weather in Houston. We lost about a week of time, and it affected the facility that does software testing. So we're in the process of working hand in hand with Boeing to figure out when the OFT2 flight will be.
All right, thank you. And this is going to be our final one. We have Andrew Tangle from the Wall Street Journal. Andrew?
Oh, hi there. Thanks.
is that, are you saying that you all don't know when in April or later this year the uncrewed Starliner launch will be? And then my other question was about the recent statement by the ASAP panel, or a member of the ASAP panel, that it was imperative that the safety culture audit at Boeing be performed before the crewed launch later this year. Can you tell us what the status of that safety culture audit is, what problems, if any, it's found, and whether those have been addressed?
I'll take the questions. Yeah, we are going to do an organizational safety assessment with Boeing. We've been looking at the right timing to do that audit. You know, with COVID-19, it's problematic to do it in person, and these are the kind of audits that are best done when we can sit down and talk to the Boeing employees face to face. So we'll do that before the crewed flight test later this year. We've been planning that all along, and the ASAP pointed that out in their public remarks a few weeks back. So we've had that on the books, and we're going to go do that. And then the first question was relative to the OFT-2 launch date. Yeah, we are going to have to move off of 4.2. It's a very busy time frame on the space station with the Soyuz mission, and then Crew 2, and then it's a busy time on the range. And so we're working hand in hand with Boeing to go figure out, you know, when that launch date will be, and we'll just have to stand by for further developments on exactly when that flight will fly.
All right. Thank you, Steve. And thank you to all of our briefers today. That is going to do it for us. Sorry again about the late start, but thanks to everybody for taking those questions and giving the answers today. Everybody be sure to tune in when we have the Crew 2 astronauts themselves talking live on NASA TV coming up at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central Time for their Crew 2 news conference. And again, everything focused right now on no earlier than April 20th for this mission, so continue to stay tuned, and we will see you a little bit later today. Thank you.